And get started.
Very good.
All right, sounds great. Well, hello, Mr. Houston, and hello to all the people who are currently tuning in, and welcome to another episode of our Python 5 CEO Super Series.
My name is Anirudh Soni. I'm a recent graduate of Johnson High School, and I was an intern for Pi 515 this past summer, and I plan to attend the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill this spring.
How great is that?
Well, thank you for
Congratulations.
that, Ani. Yes, for sure. And good afternoon to everyone watching, obviously, and as well as our special guest in Houston. My name is Robert Nishimwe, although I do go by Bobby. I'm not sure if my father would agree with that, but nonetheless, I'm currently a brand strategy associate at Ogilvy here in New York City. Graduated from Georgetown about a little more than a year ago. I don't want to age myself too fast. And I am a proud alumni of North High School and have been doing some work with Python 5 different years within different capacities as well.
Congratulations. Wonderful
Thank
success.
you.
So yeah, basically in this super series, we've just been interviewing CEOs and executives about their journey, what advice they can give for the youth in today's world, et cetera, et cetera. And the goal of this segment is just kind of connect leaders in today's workforce with youth seeking guidance to have these kind of like rich and engaging conversations to learn about that kind of future of work.
Excellent.
All right. And so, obviously, we all know why we're here today, and I'm glad to introduce Dan Houston, who is currently the CEO of Principal Financial Group. And so, Dan, with that, would you mind just giving us sort of a short introduction of yourself, of like what are the things that people should know about you and should learn about you as we start with this conversation?
Well, I'd start off with it. It's Dan Houston versus Houston. I grew up in Houston, but my last name's Houston, so we'll start there. And that's similar to where you're at school, Bobby. They're in New York at Houston Street, South Soho, right? So
Yeah.
the second is I've worked for the Principal Financial Group now for 39 years. I've been in a lot of different roles, started at a very junior role in our Dallas operations, and then have taken on over the years a lot of different roles and responsibilities, primarily through retirement and group benefits, then on into international and asset management. And it's been a wonderful career. And what we do in large part, for those of you less knowledgeable about the Principal Financial Group, we manage about $650 billion. And we manage a lot of retirement plan assets and provide small to medium-sized businesses with group health or group dental, disability, vision, as well as retirement benefits.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Dan.
Awesome. Yeah, and so I think we can just get started into this interview then. And
Please.
starting off, I recently read an article in Axios, kind of describing your typical morning routine and how it kind of begins with like a 30-minute meeting you've reserved for community members and interns. And so, could you just kind of share any day-to-day personal habits or routines that you believe have kind of helped to be like an effective leader in your career?
Yeah, and it's different for everyone. Some people are late people, and I tend to be an early person. So I'm always in the office before 5 every morning. And there's always a lot of community-related activities you're engaged with non-for-profits or, variety of interns or what I'd consider to be taking the early part of the day and making an investment back into the community, back into individuals who might be looking for some insights and perspective. This morning, the meeting was around an arboretum, which we're helping stand up, and it was a 6 o'clock meeting with a couple of very senior people in the community, and then sort of get right into the meat of the day, and again work about 12 hours here on site, 13 hours. Leave, go home, grab dinner, and then work another couple hours. And I travel about 140 nights a year, and so just got home last night from having spent 2 days in New York City. A lot of meetings when you're the chief executive officer, a lot of phone calls, Zoom since 2020, but prior to that, there were no Zoom calls. It was all phone calls. And I do think, just like in today's forum, it's a pretty convenient way to have conversations and to have both voice and visuals for the sake of conversations.
All right, well, thank you for that. And so I was interested in sort of what were the most significant challenges that you faced when starting your career, and how did overcoming those challenges in a way shape your ability to maintain a long-term vision while navigating short-term hurdles in today's rapidly changing business environment?
Yeah, great question. And when I think about early day careers for anybody, you got one thing that really works for you and one thing that works against you. The first thing that works for you is your youth and your energy to get things done and accomplished, and you can go fast. One of the things that works against you is your youth because you're thought of as being hurried and you don't have established relationships and you're still networking into the respective roles and you're trying to accomplish big things. And so, Bobby, my experience has been that becoming a subject matter expert as soon as I could possibly do so was helpful. You brought a point of view, you had insights, you had wisdom, you had knowledge, you had an understanding about the product or the service that you're providing. And so just being a good networker is not good enough. You truly, whether you're finance or accounting or electrical engineering or sales or marketing or IT, you have to be able to go deep and have good, solid domain knowledge to demonstrate that you belong at the table and that you can have a voice to influence outcomes. And then along with that, of course, is networking and working your way up through the organization.
Oh, definitely, 100%. And yeah, even Nancy, the Pi Phi One CEO, she's encouraged us to network with other businesses and CEOs. And so, in this type of like changing business environment where the youth are now encouraged to start their own businesses and learn technology, how do you feel AI, this new trend of AI and technology, is going to like impact the future of work? And do you think it's impacting principal today?
Yeah, I think artificial intelligence and machine learning, it's been around for a long time. And just like the internet really wasn't really adopted in a significant way for individuals and businesses until the search engine was created. I think the same thing holds true for AI and machine learning because it was the chat GBT and the ease of access and availability that's allowed most all of us now to have at least experimented with it. And because it's a self-learning machine, and garbage in, garbage out sort of thing, I think we'll have to be very careful about the protocols and the oversight that's going to be necessary to make sure that it doesn't get corrupted and that it, in fact, is providing good, sage advice, input, and reliable reporting. But as it relates to impact on society, I think it's going to be significant in all of the industries that exist, just like the internet does for us today. I think that there are serious conversations going on in the regulatory bodies to make sure that it is appropriately oversighted, which is going to be really important. But I hope that doesn't stymie creativity and innovation to adopt this and to help us augment all of us in what we do every day. It will displace some specific task, but I think as it relates to jobs, it'll be how do you harness artificial intelligence and how do you leverage it? And so we'll all have to just sort of grow alongside of it, just as we use Google today, right? It replaced the encyclopedia and the Britannica encyclopedias, and this will have a similar sort of impact, I think.
And so, Dan, speaking of leverage, today we obviously have, it's 515, which deals with a lot of youth and a lot of young people. And one of the things that we always think about is how do we get sort of young people into sort of the workforce, and with the necessary skills are needed and whatnot. And so I was thinking, if you are thinking about sort of young people and college students at this point, what would you say is either the biggest mistake or biggest misunderstanding that they tend to have or currently may have when trying to find a job within their earlier career search?
It's a great question. And you made an earlier statement about entrepreneurism. And I think that definition's been changed over time because entrepreneurs originally had a certain vision and a skill set, and they used their own money, they mortgaged their home. They were probably later in their careers. There are the exceptions, but they may have already sort of been working for 10 or 15 years. So they had a body of work and knowledge that allowed them to then propel that into, hey, what about thinking about it a little bit differently? And they went on and they were an entrepreneur and they moved on. I see a lot of college grads coming out of school without domain knowledge. They have, certain views and thoughts, and I think they may be slightly misguided to think entrepreneurialism is easy, or that it doesn't have barriers, and that somehow just because you have a dream doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to realize that, because it may turn out that there's a broader set of skills and knowledge and expertise that you may need to make that work. Now, believe me, I'm not suggesting that all of us shouldn't come out with dreams, and if it works your way, you can have success, especially if you have parents or friends or family that have deep pockets that might be able to fund you over that period of time. But I do think oftentimes for most of us that becoming gainfully employed and leveraging our college careers, developing insights and knowledge, and practicing those, honing those, having those mature and experience probably set you up on a path for success. So that was the entrepreneurial question that was asked earlier. Your second question relative to skill sets, I come back to something I said earlier, being really good at what you do, understanding your domain, understanding your practice, and gaining a reputation that if you're going to pull a dozen people in a room to have a conversation about something serious about the business, you'd want your name on that list where they'd say, I want Bobby in the room. That's, because he brings, and then fill in the blank. You want to become that person. And I think it's demonstration through wisdom and knowledge. And most importantly, being known as the person that gets things done and gets done in a proper way is a great reputation to have. And then the third item I would say is, are you a collaborator? Do you work well with others? Because the idea of lone rangers, it works in some jobs, but I think nearly all jobs now require collaborative efforts and characteristics in order to be successful.
For sure. And I mean, now going into college now, I think it's something to keep in mind. And
Yeah.
This next question is a little more like I probably relate to it more as I'm going into my first year at undergraduate, and as I'm going to start applying for these internships in the summer, and I would love to secure one in principal. And I was wondering, what does principal look for in terms of recruiting these undergraduate and graduate students for these early career opportunities?
Yeah, so I think ideally a person has strong critical thinking skills. They're able to solve problems. I think the second one is that they have to be self-motivated. You don't join a company to get motivated. You have to be self-motivated. When I talk to our interns, and I meet with nearly all of them, I make myself available. Those are back to the early morning meetings. I want to know how tough it was, because we want to make them very tough. Because making that internship have you doing real work and having it be challenging for you only makes you a better student and makes you a better worker for the workforce. And that's really important, because there's some jobs it's billed as a financial analyst, and the only thing you do is sort of balance debits and credits, but you never really get into the serious work that needs to be done if you're going to pursue an accounting degree. So the second thing is to be willing to be self-motivated to work hard. The third is you need to be able to be a good networker. Oftentimes people are relocating. You're in a strange city. You're going to be asked to be independent, start that journey into adulthood where you need to be a little self-sufficient. And that's not to say we won't help resource you, both financially and through resources, but you do have to be responsible in that way. And then lastly, it gets back to your ability to work with people that are going to be, in most cases, twice and 3 times your age. And they know what they need to do. The question is, do you know what you need to do? And think about it in the context of how you engage people, much like you would your parents or your grandparents.
Well, Dan, thank you for that answer. I can say that through my few engagements with Ani, I think he does exemplify some of those, if not all the qualities that you have
Oh, good.
in your answer. And speaking of, especially with internships, there's often always a developmental process with internships, a development process with learning new things, and with that also mentorship, people that help and guide you along the way within your sort of your early career and just even life in general. And so, with that in mind, I would like to know, sort of, then, who can you name a person? Who is that person that has had sort of a great impact on your life, and how has that been reflected in sort of your overall development, whether it's career or just even outside of work overall?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things. And I think a lot of people would say this, but my father and grandfather had a profound impact on me as a person and the person I've become, through role modeling what's hard work, what's the importance of education, what's the importance of collaborating and developing relationships. Those are things that oftentimes I know in some households aren't readily available. And if they're not, you have to find other ways of those early days of becoming and entering into um, adulthood, even as a teenager. And then, there's frankly too many examples of people at work, and I could list a dozen that had a significant impact on me, but they were generally my boss or someone senior to me that we established a relationship that allowed myself to benefit from that. And that's the part then you have the responsibility to carry it forward, right? To have a 30-minute conversation today, because, this interview may mean nothing to some people, and for others, it may have hit the mark, that maybe they picked up something that caused them to do things a little bit differently to advance not only their professional life, but maybe even their personal life. And then also, I think we underestimate the impact that reading can have. And they say the way in which we learn are the books we read and the people we meet. And there's a lot of books that are out there that don't cost a dime. And through college, I read a lot on Socrates and Aristotle, and I'm still a ferocious reader today. And so I think it's imperative that we inform ourselves and help groom ourselves and think about some of these from a philosophical perspective, and how we think about life, how we commit to servant leadership, how we operate when we're on and off the camera, and when we're in our personal and professional lives.
So the books that you read, like Socrates, like, do you have any book advice that maybe for high school students or college students like me, do you have any books for us to read as we kind of go into this workforce?
Yeah, I got a whole bookcase over there, but if there was one, if you wanted to understand leadership, Peter Drucker wrote a book called The Effective Leader, and it's not a long book. There's another one, Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Those are two books I read very early on in my career. Atlas Shrugged is one that is hard to get through. It's very long, and it's probably published originally in the 50s. Ayn Rand, which basically addresses the issue of capitalism, which is not a bad read as well. So those would maybe be top three to think about. There's no shortage today of books, and so many different topics. And frankly, for those who don't want to invest the time in reading, if you look on Prime, Amazon, or Netflix. There's some incredible documentaries about business and entrepreneurialism and capitalism, and I would encourage people, just whatever works best for you, pursue that.
Well, thank you for that, Dan. Obviously, as we are speaking to some young people, youth, or people who engage with youth in one way, shape, or form, I was wondering, in terms of like, when you think back of your time when you were back in college, sort of what are the things that you wish someone had told you to think about as you were thinking about sort of your future, or just overall sort of like, what are some of those experiences that you felt were so integral to the person who you've become within college that you think students who are currently in college should start thinking about, or should start thinking about how they can engage in some of those experiences or learnings, if you will? I know you've already talked to us about books, Aristotle, and all those other things, but what are the other things that you think students who are currently in college should do to just enrich themselves and help themselves develop overall?
Yeah, I'm probably a really bad example because I didn't have a traditional college life, in that I was married as a sophomore in college. I worked on the weekends on a farm and the weeknights as a mechanic at Sears. And so the whole notion of a college experience was not typical for me. I went to class in order to graduate, obtain my degree to get a job, and push forward. So not necessarily typical. As far as advice goes, you get sort of one shot as it relates to a series of decisions in your life relative to education, and you can't miss out on elementary or middle school or high school or college or your post college or your doctorate. And there's a sequencing, but I'm a firm believer as it relates to, by the time you get to college, you have to know how to study and memorize and know your own proclivities relative to how do you learn best? Is it with a study group? Is it in isolation? And I think figuring that out as early as you can in your life is really, really important to do. And then secondly, and I know a lot of young people are listening to this. Some of you are paying for your own school, but in many cases, your parents are helping you. Thank them for what they're investing in you, because it's a big deal and they're borrowing money to do that. And I don't think it's wrong to be a student who also works. I think actually that's how you avoid getting $28,000, $30,000 in student loans, is by, and again, they're unglamorous jobs. I've worked in food service. I've worked as a mechanic. I've done all of those things. But I mean it when I say it does build character, and it makes you humble and it makes you appreciative of things as you get further along in your career. But really learning how to learn is a really important skill set, and you cannot start too young. We have an 18-month-old grandson, a 10-year-old grandson, and a 20-year-old granddaughter. And I'll speak for the 10 and 20-year-old. They're both, they're very good students. And I saw a picture of the 18-week-old getting read a book at daycare, and just thinking about just the motion of hearing a voice, flipping a page, and understanding the importance of education. It can't start soon enough. I'm a firm believer that a lot of this world's problem with regards to poverty and hunger and lack of housing anchors back to household and a safe place with a roof over your head. And that is in large part driven by education and being able to obtain a job that pays a living wage.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with that. And
Thanks.
I mean, your childhood or college life was, I mean, really unique. And I was wondering, I mean, maybe CEOs and leaders of companies around the country have had these kind of unique experiences in childhood. And I was wondering, have you found anything common between leaders of companies and CEOs that you have met that you feel, as us now, youth trying to become leaders also in the future, that we should know?
It's a good question because at the end of the day, it's really all about your ability to overcome adversity for a lot of individuals. And that's a tough thing to do, but I see that common. I will tell you that most of the CEOs out there, they weren't born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They've worked hard to get where they're at. That's probably the most common attribute that I see. You see education and the role and how important it was, and even their father or mother may have been a homemaker and a police officer or a single head of household. For their parents, their core values around the importance of trust and belief and being a good human being really grounded those people in influential roles. And yeah, every once in a while you meet the jerk, right? They're out there, and there are people that were sort of born into it. But most people have worked really hard to get where they're at in their respective roles.
So then we're coming to a close, and I would like to just give you a moment to share any final thoughts that you would like to share with our viewers and even just the youth that might be listening today.
Yeah, so Bobby and Annika, I'd first just say thank you for inviting me to be part of this super series, and it's humbling to be invited to share thoughts and perspective that might be useful to somebody else. The world is unfortunately getting more divisive. I'm hopeful that the generation I'm speaking to right now will make the world a better place by finding more common ground and aligning interest and resources to do more good and a less combative world. And I'll have a lot of hope I have three they're adult children, I guess. But I think they've got sort of the right mindset, and I meet a lot of other people and I meet their friends. And so I am hopeful that there's a lot of great value that's going to be created as time goes on here. So with that, I'll sign off, and I again appreciate Bobby and Annika, your letting me be part of this program today.
Well, thank you so much for joining as well. Everybody, that was Dan Houston from Principal Financial Group, and hopefully you'll join us into any of the more series that we have. And Dan, you have a great day, and thank you so much for joining us today.
You do the same. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you so much.